Hey there, welcome back to the Business Behind the Game, where we break down the business side of sports from emerging trends to the people and companies shaping the industry today. I'm Kush, and today we have a really exciting guest, Ben Platt. Ben is currently back at the University of Vermont, where he's taken on a hybrid coaching and operations role with the men's basketball team after a stint as a graduate assistant coach at USC men's basketball. He's also the founder of Courtside Connections, a networking platform built to bring people across the basketball industry together. He graduated from Vermont with a degree in business administration and a minor in sports management, and his path from student manager to USC and back to Vermont as a coach is a story about earning your place in the industry, this industry via relationship and one film session at a time. Before we start today, Ben, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing well. It's a nice day here in Vermont. I'm looking out at the green mountains out here, and it's a great day.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get this started. So let's start from the beginning. You grew up around sports and started coaching and training young athletes as early as high school. When did you first realize you wanted to pursue a career in basketball specifically rather than just playing or watching it?
Yeah, so I actually didn't know I wanted to get in basketball until I got to Vermont as a freshman, just as a student. I was a baseball player growing up. I loved baseball, so I
Hmm.
worked out and trained kids and played baseball by myself. Basketball really wasn't my main sport. But I knew coming to Vermont that I wanted to be involved in basketball or involved in sports in general.
Hmm.
And so I kind of reached out within the Vermont athletics department, and a role was suggested as a student manager for the Vermont team. That was a way I could get myself involved in sports here.
Hmm.
Obviously, always loved basketball, watched basketball, studied the game. Just never was really good on the court.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how I kind of dove into joining a basketball program, joining Vermont. And kind of just from my freshman year, I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the culture here, the program, and everything about it.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I used to play basketball personally, and I think basketball is really easy to just fall in love with, and just and it's pretty easy to understand too compared to a lot of other sports.
For sure.
And you just mentioned your student manager role. You spent nearly 4 years as head student manager for the Vermont basketball team. For people who don't know what a student manager actually does, can you break it down? Like, what were your real responsibilities, and what did that role teach you?
Yeah, so I think, the student manager role, you'll hear it from anyone who has been one or even who's been a part of a team that's around student managers. The job is not a glorious one. It's one that's kind of behind the scenes. You're there to be a supporter, to support and help the program and help the players and coaches. So that can be from, rebounding for players, and that's on the court rebounding and passing for players who want to get some extra shots up.
Yeah.
That's assisting the coaches with going maybe to go run and grab coffees or organizing the team jerseys and equipment stuff, helping with bags and travel,
Mhm.
any small logistical things, whether it's carrying the chairs out during the game you see on live television. Usually it's the student managers who are running out there with the timeout chairs. Um,
Mhm.
but it's all the little things, filling up water bottles, cleaning off the whiteboards in the locker room. Student manager is kind of this like unrecognized role, that allows you to be part of the team, but it's a really important role. It's all the little things that people wouldn't see.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I've seen student managers at my high school, and obviously, so at times it can be really tedious work and some stuff that you might not want to do. But I think it always helps out later on. It's learning
For
from
sure. And I
experience.
think, as a student manager, like, starting from freshman year to going to senior year, you slowly increase your responsibilities as you build a stronger relationship and connection with the players and the coaches. You kind of can create your own value as a
Yeah.
student manager. So I think that's kind of the beauty of that role and the beauty of being at a place like Vermont. I was really able to establish and create a new identity of what a student manager should look like.
Yeah.
And that's why I think I'm really happy to be back because I'm in a place that appreciates and respects those things.
Yeah, just following up on that, can you just give us like maybe an example or two of what you mean by you kind of creating a new identity for a student manager?
Yeah, so I think, I really focused on my relationships with the players, and so I found value in being in the gym with them all the time. I wasn't really necessarily running workouts at that time in my first year or two
Mhm.
as a manager, but just connecting with the players and building relationships through just being on the court and helping them out. So just simply rebounding. So that's kind of how I dove my way in. And through my passion about the team and the program and wanting to be a part of the culture, I was presented with opportunities to do, um, you know, important things for the team that would help. So, obviously Huddle Sports Code
Mhm.
is heavily utilized in college basketball and all levels of basketball. So, helping code and create scouts and scouting reports and mini projects on opponents, offenses, defenses, creating value on the court and
Mhm.
in games after then just kind of making my connections with players.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And I just wanted to follow up on your huddle comment actually. During your time at Vermont and also later at USC as a GA, you became a proficient in synergy and huddle, which is two of the most important film and analytics tools in basketball. How do you develop those skills, and how important is film breakdown becoming in college basketball today?
Yeah, I would say it's it's super important. Obviously, the more tools you have in your toolbox, the more effective and impactful you'll be able to be. So, just being great at player development is great, but what else can you do? You know what I mean? There's if you're good in video, if you're good making relationships with players, if you're really good at the operation stuff and scheduling things, and then on top of the X's and O's, if you're able to have multiple tools in your bag that's just going to make your value increase. And so I'm super thankful that as someone who kind of was just starting out my freshman, sophomore year in the world of basketball, one of the assistant coaches who was here at the time, Chris Santo, really took me under his wing and offered me and spent some of his time that he really didn't need to put in,
Hmm.
but spent some extra time kind of teaching me the ropes of sports code and how impactful it is and help me create value for myself. So I'm a super appreciative of Chris and what he was able to offer. He was a video coordinator. He was in the video room with the New York Knicks before coming to Vermont. So he kind of took what he learned there and passed it on to me. And then, from there I kind of took with it or, took what I got from it and ran with it. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think building a network is really important, and that's obviously a huge reason I'm doing this podcast today. But I think the more connections that you build, and it's going to be really, really important down the line for sure, even though it might not seem like it in the moment.
yep.
So now I wanted to transition over to Courtside Connections. Taking us back to the, can you take us back to the moment the idea came to you? What problem were you seeing in the basketball industry that made you think that this platform needs to exist?
Yeah, so I think I had the idea of starting something like this because I realized early on at Vermont that we do things a very specific way. We teach the game a very specific way.
Hmm.
From an X's and O's standpoint, just a very specific way of teaching our guys how we wanna perform on the court. And so obviously Vermont's been a super successful program. Multiple NCAA tournament appearances. Um, and was super appreciative of being here. But I definitely wanted to learn about the fact that you can do things multiple different ways. There's not one way to win games. And so I think as someone starting out in this industry and knowing that I was just at this spot, that's all I've really learned basketball through the lens of Vermont basketball. I wanted to be able to connect with other people from other programs and learn about other perspectives on the game, other ways to teach the game of basketball.
Hmm.
And so that was kind of the main reason for wanting to connect with other people, hear from other coaches, other managers, their experiences, and learn about other ways to be successful to teach the game.
Yeah, and you just went over a little bit about what Courtside Connections does, just connecting you with other people. Can you give us like a really like deep dive and into what it actually is and what it does and who is it for?
Yeah, so Courtside Connections, I guess I would say it's not for a specific group of people. It's not just for managers. I think It's for basketball enthusiasts. You know what I mean? People who are
Mm.
interested in learning and growing their knowledge of the game. So that can be pretty broad. Um, it's a Zoom program, so I'd be having kind of like a Zoom like this, but it's a live session. So it's
Okay.
actually there's interaction between the guest speaker who's talking, and then also the people who are in the active call, the live call. And so I'll bring someone in like a guest speaker. I had Scott Brown, who's currently the GM, the general manager of the Raptors 905 team. I had
Hmm.
him on roughly a year ago, and it's a live call, and so he kind of comes in and talks about his path into the industry, where he started, how he got to where he is today. And then each session is kind of tailored to like a main focus for that guest speaker. So Scott kind of talked about the operation side of things in the G League. I've had other assistant coaches in Division One basketball talk about maybe specifically some offensive concepts or some defensive concepts. But after they discuss kind of their path into the industry, we'll hone in on like a main focus of each session. And then after that, we'll kind of wrap up with a Q&A for people who are actively
Hmm.
live in the session. They can ask questions about their path to the industry, the specific thing they talked about, or something that wasn't mentioned that they just want to know about the guest speaker. But it wants to be an interactive session where people are having some back and forth.
Yeah, I think I find that really interesting, and I'm glad that you made it interactive too, because obviously lots of times people just have platforms like that where it's just guest speakers and they don't have time to like or chance to interact with other people. So I think it's really important that because I mean building a sense of community from basketball enthusiasts is really important.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
And Courtside Connections, you actually ran it for 2 years while simultaneously being a student and a student manager. What did building that look like from a practical standpoint, and how did you actually find people to connect and grow the platform?
Yeah, I think it goes to the same thing of like how do you network, how do you connect with yourself? I started off with the idea of Courtside Connections. I posted it on my personal Instagram page. Um, and then I did the LinkedIn grind, man, like we talked about a little bit before. Like I was sending out kind of these messages, 50, 75, 100 messages a day saying, "Hey, come join Courtside Connections. I've got this guest speaker." And so I initially relied on like the my close circle of people who I know had been successful in the industry. So I think my first official guest speaker was Chris Santo, the person who kind of taught me sports code.
Yeah,
Um, and obviously, he was a super supportive person in my corner. And so, obviously, didn't have a bunch of people in that first session, but it slowly and gradually kept building up to more and more people. So, relied with people in my close circle. But then I did the grind of sending individual texts
yeah,
over and over again, telling them the times, and then, individual messages for LinkedIn, and just trying to consistently reach out. At the beginning is a grind. You gotta chip away and just do your outreach. You're not gonna get a response from everyone, but you hit up 50 people, you're hoping 10 reach back out, and then you hit
yeah,
up 100 people, you're hoping 30 people reach back out. So
yeah.
sometimes that's how it goes, and then you build some consistency.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know we talked about this earlier, but it's kind of the same thing with the podcast. Obviously, starting off is going to be slow, but then later, once you start sending out more emails, more DMs, and as your podcast and whatever your platform is starts to grow, then you start building that credibility, and you get a lot more people on as well.
100%.
So now I want to transition towards your time at USC. You were a graduate assistant coach at USC men's basketball, which is one of the most like premier programs in the country. How did that opportunity come about, and what did it take to land a role at that level straight out of undergrad?
Yeah, so I think, the for student managers trying to get that next job after being a student manager is a stressful process. I hear it from
Yeah,
people who are my age, people who have been older than me, people who are now going through the process currently. It's a stressful process. And so like we've talked about, like we just said, being proactive about that, that attempt to get a job is really important. So, I did the basic cold call of reaching out and firing out emails to all these Power Five conferences of schools, creating a portfolio. I spent a lot of time making like a visual graphic portfolio
hmm,
of what I've done in my past, the different camps I've worked, my responsibilities at UVM as a manager, getting that out, using my connections and relationships through Courtside Connections, and just outreaching, having people in your circle, have your back. And so the idea is you want other people to be in your mind. So like you
Hmm.
want when someone's having a conversation with someone, if you can be the first name or the second name that they think of when they're like, "Huh, I need a GA or I need a video coordinator or I need
Yeah.
a Dobo." If you're one of those first names, that's kind of the goal there. And so that's kind of what happened for me with USC. I had reached out early in fall, hadn't heard back from them at all. I was actually planning on coming back to Vermont as a GA,
Hmm.
and I kind of got a text from one of the operations people at USC saying, "Hey Ben, USC here would love to connect and see about a GA role." And so obviously I was super thrilled about hearing that, and
Yeah.
went from there and ended up working out. Got to USC about a week later and started working. And so it came from one of my close contacts just having my name in their head and right time, right place.
Yeah, for sure. And this just brings us back to the networking thing we were talking about earlier, like always having the right network and making sure um, you're utilizing it to the best of your abilities. And I'd always thank them later for the stuff that your network can do for you.
For
And
sure.
your time at USC, walk us through what your day to day looked like as a GA at USC. What were you spending most of your time on, and what does your role involve?
So for me, I think, most of my time was spent with video, working with sports code. I
Hmm.
think my main responsibility was kind of working with our scout team and preparing um, our actual team for the opponent offenses. So how we're going to be playing defense. My main role was, watching the last 5, 6 games of our most recent opponent that we're going to be playing, and breaking down their offense in the half court transition, kind of getting an understanding of the style of play
Hmm.
that our opponent is going to be playing in, and so implementing defensive stations and tactics that we need to work on in practice for the
Yeah.
build up into the game. So working on guarding certain actions and sets. And understanding conceptually what the goal is of the opponent's offense. So
Hmm.
that took a majority of my time up, just on sports code and watching a bunch of film. But I would say that and USC Coach Musselman is a really good recruiter. They do a great job of connecting with recruits from all
Hmm.
classes, whether it's the next senior class, group of freshmen, or even younger than that. They really take pride in reaching out and connecting with recruits. And that's something, that I really took away. That was one of my biggest takeaways from being at USC, learning about the recruiting process, whether it's, making graphics,
Yeah.
doing, game evaluations for AAU games, whatever that is. That was a large portion of my time at USC as well, helping with the recruiting process.
Yeah. And following up on that, on the film part specifically, was that something you did by yourself, or was it you worked with the coaches or with the players at the same time?
Yeah, so there was a coach. At the high major level, there's, more coaches in the building. You have more people on staff
Yeah.
than like a mid-major like Vermont. So there was one coach specifically that kind of I worked under, in helping him kind of break down that film, present him with the information necessarily that we need to be working on. And so I would, give him my thoughts, give him my ideas, let him know what I've been seeing in the film, share the film and the cut-ups that I created, and then working with him to then present it and have it organized to the team for practice and for games.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And for USC in general, it is in LA, which is one of the most like competitive recruiting markets in the country. So what have you learned about recruiting from being inside a high major program like USC?
Consistency, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Consistency, being consistent and being personal, personable. I think it's about making a true connection. All of these guys, um, you know, at USC, you're obviously recruiting the highest players in the country, the highest
Yeah.
ranked players in the country, and so everyone's going to have something to offer. It's is the fit right, and you want to find the right players. You're not just trying to get the best top 5 players in the class. Obviously, that
Yeah.
That would be great. But you want the fit to be right. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You want people to understand how you play, your style of play,
Mhm.
and if things align. You don't want to bring in someone that doesn't agree with your principles and your values.
Mhm.
So on top of being consistent, making a connection, is the fit right? Do they represent the things that you want your program to be about?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, definitely you can have great players and they might not be as coachable or might not fit the culture and just general like vibe of the program. So I think definitely just the recruiting is very important and it can be a long process as well. And now I wanted to transition back to your time at Vermont. You're now back at Vermont with a hybrid coaching and operations role. What does your day to day look like compared to your time at USC?
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit different. It's just a different dynamic. Because of the resources at USC compared to Vermont. Obviously, there's less support, I would say, at Vermont, just because you have
Hmm.
less people on staff, there's less managers, less financial resources.
Yeah.
So today I ended up working out our guys from 8:30 till around 12 now in
Hmm.
the afternoon, as you know, our entire staff is currently out on the road recruiting
Yeah.
all over the country. And so being able to, one, have less people on the staff gives me more of an opportunity
Yeah.
to have a more of a hands-on role with our guys on the court, coaching them one-on-one. So that's been an exciting kind of change from my time at USC, having more of a voice. Um, but especially here at Vermont compared to USC, it's about wearing multiple hats. I'm doing a bunch of, or a little bit to a bunch of everything here, whether
Yeah.
it's on the court player workouts, helping with operation stuff and getting meals set up, helping some of our international players get transported over here, settling them in our team house in their apartments,
Hmm.
breaking down some X's and O's and doing some film work just like I did at USC. I think there's just a need for a little bit more of everything now because there's less bodies in the office. And that's awesome. That's exactly what I wanted to be, super hands-on in multiple different aspects of the program.
Yeah. You just mentioned the fact that I mean, obviously at USC there's a lot more resources compared to Vermont, and because that's mainly because Vermont is more like a mid-major program, and USC is like obviously a higher major program. And what's the biggest difference you've seen between working inside those two environments? Is the main difference like you just mentioned the resources that you have, or is it something else?
Yeah, I would say like the resources is a big piece of it. Obviously, the financial resource, the NIL factor changes things a little bit.
Hmm.
But I think just like the day to day, how things are going, how things are attacked each day. I think it's just a different perspective. It's a different mindset. Obviously, in both programs, you want to win. That's important. That's the most successful thing. Um, but I think the focus for us right now here at Vermont is really establishing the culture.
Hmm.
That's been something that's been really steady here in the past 6, 7, 8 years. Coach Becker has been super successful. Has been to six, March Madness appearances.
Hmm.
And I've been a part of three of those, and so that's been super exciting. And so I think, making sure our guys are in the gym right now is really important, and getting them connected. But just outside of being in the gym, um, making sure our players understand what this program is about and learning the culture here, having an understanding for every new player here, where we have 10 new guys, 11 new guys on our roster, instilling the culture, the relationship of working hard and competing, and being good people. So
Yeah,
that's kind of the process right now.
and speaking of the NIL factor that you mentioned specifically, college basketball is going through like a massive change right now, for mainly because of NIL, but there's also things like the transfer portal and revenue sharing. From your perspective inside a program, like from a coaching and operations standpoint, how are those changes affecting the day to day operations of a coaching staff?
I don't think I don't think it's that different now. Like we've got our team now. Like that's
Hmm.
all that stuff's figured out. Now it's about the work. Like the money is the money, but
Yeah.
now that we're here, everyone's got a fair shot to play. And so you hope that the guys you may have invested in more than others can produce, and that's your hope.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, everyone's going to have a fair shot, especially with 10, 11 new guys on the roster. Like the door is wide open. And
Yeah,
so we were able to bring back three returners, two of them who started, one of them who was a major piece off the bench.
yeah,
So obviously we feel confident in their ability to be in the rotation next year, and play big minutes. But for all the other spots here, it's kind of an open book. It's a free for all of fighting, and that's what we want. We want people to compete. We want people to be competitive in the summer,
yeah.
and we'll see where things go, you know?
Yeah, and in terms of roster building itself, one huge part is a transfer portal, and that's like completely changed how rosters are built. From a coaching standpoint, what does that mean for how programs can recruit and develop players?
Yeah, it's definitely something that's super interesting, especially with the new 5 for 5 rule that was just passed with the NCAA, allowing players
Hmm.
to just have 5 years from when you graduate high school to play. And so
Yeah,
that kind of delays or makes it harder on some of the portal, and the 5 for 5 rule makes it a little bit tougher on some of the 27s coming in this next year for
yeah,
spots. And especially just with the portal and how you're able to utilize it, it does change the recruiting landscape, and it's kind of what you wanna kind of invest your time in. Do you want to invest your time in a freshman who might not be ready to play right away?
yeah,
And maybe he'll stay around and he can kind of start to slowly build the culture and understanding. Or can you get a higher caliber player in the portal who's, been to other places, gets the game a little bit more, is more of a veteran experience. It's kind of what you're looking for, and I think it's all over the place. I think you're stupid not to utilize the portal if you can, financially, if you're able to, if you have the resources to. Obviously, it's not a financial burden as much if you're recruiting people from out of high school.
yeah,
So there's that, but it's all kind of um, based off the program you're a part of, and what your head coach wants. He's the boss man, so you're
yeah.
following him and what he thinks is best.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think the transfer portal has become like really interesting. Just from what I've seen online, is the 5 for 5 rule especially is really interesting and makes it. I mean, for young players, it makes life a lot tougher because obviously you have these more significantly more experienced players, and they're most likely going to be the ones filling out the roster spots. So it's going to be tough on the freshmen especially.
Yep.
Yeah, and just transitioning over, on LinkedIn, your long term you mentioned that your long term goal is to lead a high level D1 program and eventually coach in the NBA. And obviously that's a really incredibly competitive path. So what's your plan for climbing the ranks, and what's the most important move do you think you can make at this stage of your career?
I think being where I'm at, I'm in
Yeah,
a perfect place, and so I gotta feel confident and in my decisions of where I currently am, and not settle in. You know what I mean? I think, you learn every day, you take it day by day. And obviously it's a super competitive program or super competitive industry. Um, but approaching it by day and making sure that I'm continuing to learn, continuing to meet people,
hmm,
and continuing to learn more about the game from not the same perspective. So pushing my knowledge, but understanding that it's a long path. You know what I mean? It's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
yeah,
And so understanding that, being confident in where I'm at, but not comfortable.
yeah,
Continuing to expand myself and push myself. Obviously you can be complacent if you want to be,
yeah,
especially when you come back to a place that you've already been. I know you can fall into that trap, but that's not, the reason for coming back here. It's to expand the opportunity I have to be hands-on with a coaching role, and to take that and come back here and win another championship, and then take another leap in the next role. So staying here, being present day by day, and chipping away with
yeah.
passion.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think passion and just realizing that it's gonna be a long journey is really important because obviously people can start to get complacent, being like, oh, this is gonna be a really long time, or they might not want to wait that long. But I think patience is really important and just continuing to work. And a lot of people in your position would be solely like focused on coaching itself. And but you've also built a business in Courtside Connections. So how does being an entrepreneur shape the way you think about coaching and building a program?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, I think, the Courtside Connections piece is has been great because it's helped me, network myself and be able to connect people with others. And
Yeah,
so it's kind of that feeling of giving back to a community of people that have also helped me and that will help me. Um, but I think, my understanding of what I would want my program to be um, um, is represented through just like my own principles as a human, as a person, and the care factor, the effort factor, the tenacity, the passion.
yeah,
I think that's where everything starts from. That's where it sparks from. And so the passion and the effort and your ability to work hard and put in the extra time and care about the people around you is kind of where it stems from, is where I want my own program to stem from.
yeah.
Um, and from there, obviously, being able to share that perspective and hear other perspectives from people through Courtside Connections is where I can continue to learn and, shape and tweak what I think would be best to be a part of a successful program.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that, and I think that's why Courtside Connections is such like a valuable piece. Just because obviously building connections and just learning from different perspectives can be really important, not only now but in the long term when you start to progress in as where you are as a coach. And finally, you went from GA at USC and then back to Vermont. For the young people in my audience who are passionate about basketball and want to build a career in the sport, what advice would you give them?
I would say pick your people wisely. Like
Yeah,
you obviously, networking is great. Reaching out to a bunch of people, especially when you're trying to build something like your podcast here or Courtside Connections, it's great to outreach and get as many names on the list as possible. Um, but the people that are really going to help you out are the ones you have genuine relationships with.
yeah,
I'd rather be really close and have, 5 to 6, 7, whatever it is, people that I really can rely on and trust when, as they climb the ladder, trust them, than 25 people that I don't really know that I kind of occasionally check in with, but I can't trust. You
yeah,
need people that you can trust. And I think, I get that from here, being here at Vermont. Coach Becker's been here this will be his 16th season. He's got 2 people on staff that have been with him for 13 or 14 of them.
hmm,
Similar to Coach Musselman, he's had a staff of people that have been with him since his time at Nevada, his early time at Arkansas. You want to surround yourself with people that you can trust, and that
hmm,
you can go through hard times with. It's not always picture perfect. When you're winning games, it
yeah,
might be great, but more than half of college basketball and teams are losing games. They lose more
yeah,
games than they win. So as you're climbing up the ladder here as a manager, someone in high school who's trying to bring their presence, start to connect with people, but make
yeah,
sure that they're the people that you have something in common with, that you share, values with. That's really
yeah.
important.
Yeah, I think for sure that's really important because obviously you can surround yourself with a bunch of people like you just mentioned, but I think most people would much rather just have people who they're genuinely close with, but less of those rather than a bunch of people who they just have like kind of iffy connections with. So
For sure.
yeah, and I mean that was a really great way to wrap up today's episode. First of all, huge thanks to Ben for sharing his insights. If you want to connect with Ben or learn more about Courtside Connections, you can find him on his LinkedIn. The link's in the description below. And if you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. I'm Kush, and I'll catch you next time.